Hello, Seattle and Nashville hockey fans. Welcome to a crossover, or as we like to say, squadcast episode of Locked On Predators and Locked On Kraken. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. I am Erica Lindsay Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, and I am joined once again by Kimmel, one of your co-hosts of Locked On Predators. And we are going to do a preview of the Predators at Seattle Kraken game coming up on Tuesday. So, Ann, how are we feeling today?
We're feeling pretty good. We're definitely ready for a rematch against the Seattle Kraken. We need to have a little bit of redemption coming our way.
Indeed. And so coming up on this squadcast, we're going to talk about what we saw last time these two teams hit the ice, where each one of our teams respectively is going into the match, and then, of course, some things that we both will be looking out for come Tuesday night. All that coming up on this squadcast episode of Locked On Predators and Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
All right, thanks again, hockey fans, for joining us for this special squadcast. Ann Kimmel is right here with me. I am, of course, your host, Erica Lindsay Ayala of Locked On Kraken, and Ann Kimmel, one of your co-hosts of Locked On Predators. So, Ann, let's talk about the last time these two teams hit the ice. It was back in October. Do we even remember that far back? October 2021. It was the 14th of October, and it was a 4-3 win for the Seattle Kraken.
Oh, yes. And you know what? Everybody here in Nashville remembers that because there was this moment of like, we are going to go down in history as the Seattle Kraken's first win. Like, we're the guys we're the answer to a really painful trivia question after that loss. So we remember it here in Nashville very, very well.
I see. And, in Seattle, I think we remember it. Everything this season has been, the first time we hit the ice, the first time we changed our, intro video, everything is a first.
Yep.
So that being said, though, the wins have been few and far between. So we're going to hang on to all of the moral victories that we can get. And, things started off in Nashville. So
yes, you're welcome.
yes. Things certainly have changed, though. Brandon Tanev scored in that game. Unfortunately, we lost him for the season. Yikes. So that was not great. Philip Grubauer remains our ace. Unfortunately, coming into this game for us, we'll have to see where Chris Drieger is. We actually have two goalies that are in COVID protocol. So it's Joey Decord getting the call up again. He unfortunately took that loss to St. Louis the other day. But what's been going on in Nashville since October 14th, since we last faced off?
Well, it's been really interesting to look back and compare that October 14th and to where Nashville is now, because Nashville started out 1-4. And of course, thanks to the Seattle Kraken, that was a big loss that the Predators had opening night. So it was very rocky back in October. We weren't sure, what is this team really made of? Are they going to be able to get it together? But we found out that this team may be a real deal here in the NHL. Everybody had the Nashville Predators as kind of bottom feeders of the Central Division. Here we are bouncing back and forth between first and second place. Some teams have some games in hand on us. So, we don't like to do the complicated math. We just like to stick with the math where we are up at the top. But Nashville has really kind of found their groove. They're like Stella. They got their groove back after that 1-4 thing. And they've been playing some really great hockey. Ups and downs, of course, but it's looking like a little bit different team. And I think that Seattle will find it's going to be a little bit of a different game pace, and a different game style than what we saw way back in October.
Okay, I like that. And I did notice that going into this game, the Predators are on the winning side. They have a 2-game win streak and don't play any games before our two teams will hit the ice. The Seattle Kraken will have that game against Florida. I mentioned Joey Jacord and the St. Louis Blues. We had a 2-game win streak snapped, unfortunately, by St. Louis. So we're coming off of a loss, and then we'll see what happens in Florida. And make sure you check out that squad cast with Armando Velez. He will be joining Locked on Kraken, so it'll be a little Locked on Panthers, Locked on Kraken there. So don't know what happened yet, but by the time this is out, we will have already talked about it because, that's how time and stuff works.
That's right. The magic of time.
The magic of time. So I don't know exactly what the record for the Seattle Kraken is right now, but I can tell you that we're looking to get back into the win column. But, what have been some of the things and that you've seen specifically in the last handful of games that have led you and other fans to believe, like you said, that it's really a turning of the tide? You're putting away what we saw in October and moving towards a strong 2022.
Yeah, so Nashville went through a really strong streak. They had a 12-1-1 streak through December. We're playing really great hockey. And a lot of that is just they finally all are playing the same style of hockey. And I think one of the issues in Nashville hasn't so much been talent as it has been getting all of the talent on the same page and everybody pulling in the same direction. And I think finally we're seeing Coach John Hines really getting everybody kind of galvanized together and playing one style of hockey. And they've been very successful when they've done that. Now, they did have a 4-game losing streak where teams came in and kind of got them away from their bread and butter. They've been able to make their corrections. One of the big things John Hines says is don't get too high, don't get too low. And they've been able to kind of weather that really successful streak. And they've been able to kind of dig themselves out of their 4-game losing streak by just kind of keeping their wits about them. So I think there's a very different team. I think it's a team that's matured through some really high highs and a couple of low lows, and through some absences and having to have people come in, step in and jump in. So I think there's a maturing that's happened for the team over the season that is going to hopefully make a difference in the game when we see it. But so tell me, what is different about the Seattle Kraken from when we saw them back in October?
Wow. So unfortunately, we have not found much in the ways of winning, and we're going through a rough losing streak until those 2 wins. I think that what you said as far as like everyone kind of finding and getting on the same page, I think that I found really interesting because that's what Seattle still needs to do. And so I've been liking it to like watching a teenager play hockey or watching a teenager do anything. That's the Seattle Kraken right now. Depending on where they are in their teenage years, I feel like we're in our mid to late teens, and it's like you know what's expected of you. You have a good sense of what you want to do on a day-to-day basis. However, the wind can blow at any given way, and you're thrown off from what you know you want to do and what you want to do. And that's extremely frustrating. Now, what I will say is the Seattle Kraken are a very well-behaved, polite, well-mannered teenager. So there have not been a lot of there have not been a lot of fits, despite the fact that this is truly some growing pains that the team has been going through. But what I can say as far as what that actually looks like on the ice, I have felt that Philip Grubauer has not completely found his rhythm with the Seattle Kraken. And I've been wanting to see Chris Driedger in net for a while. And actually, those 2 wins that I was talking about were with Driedger in net. But then, as I just mentioned, Driedger goes into COVID protocol. And it's kind of been that way all season. But he's had 2 minor injuries after playing 2 pretty good games, including, I mentioned that we're going to be playing the Panthers by the time this airs. That game will have gone to a final. But Drieger got us a win against the Florida Panthers at a time when they were red hot in the league. And that's his former team. And then almost immediately after that, he goes on the injured reserve.
Yeah, some growing pains happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and the big question is, well, what's that going to look like when our two teams hit the ice come Tuesday night? And that's coming up next on this Squadcast. But, Anne, right now, we're going to tell the folks about one of our sponsors, BetOnline.ag. Yeah, so we know that it's 2022 and lots of folks have New Year's resolutions. And it's one of the resolutions that you should have is making sure that you're heading over to betonline.ag with their new website, new interface, all the props, all the odds that you need to stay up to date with your favorite sports. And here's the great thing, and as you know, they are offering with promo code locked on a 50% welcome bonus for anyone that goes over to betonline.ag and creates an account and puts in their first deposits. You'll get 50% of your first deposit back when you use promo code locked on. And so everything from NFL, NHL, and of course NBA, don't wait to take advantage of all of the offers available in 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on sports action. BetOnline, where the game starts. When the puck drops on Tuesday, let's talk about some of these numbers, and I'm gonna pop up some stats for the fans over on Locked on Kraken. What are we expecting to see? Where do you think that this game will favor the Nashville Predators, even though they'll be on the road?
Well, on the road is always a challenge. And for those of us back here in Central Time, the game doesn't start until 9 o'clock Central Time. So there is a little bit of a thing about being out west, I think, for the players and the time change. And let me just tell you, Lord knows there's a thing for me. 9 o'clock, puck drop. I'm like, that's a little bit bedtime. But besides that number, and this feels so strange to say, I never thought I would say this, but one of the areas where I really think Nashville is going to have an advantage is in special teams. And let me tell you, Nashville's power play has been the Achilles heel of this team for seasons. Almost to the point where it's the biggest joke that's not even remotely funny. And yet somehow this year, the Predators have turned this around. They're sixth right now in the league in the power play. They are clicking. Both units have been very successful. And so for Nashville to be successful, if you just go ahead and feel free to slash once in a while or trip, Nashville, I think, will be pretty successful at taking advantage of having a man advantage. So I think for us, the power play is definitely going to be, being sixth in the league is definitely going to be an advantage for us.
Yes. And the power play for the Seattle Kraken, not great. You mentioned that the Predators 6th overall in the league at a 25.6% clip, whereas the Seattle Kraken 23rd overall at a 17.4% clip. Also on the penalty kill, you have the advantage. So at an 81.8% efficiency, which is 12th overall in the league, whereas we are 20th with a 78.2% success rate. So special teams, always something that unfortunately from the Locked on Kraken side of things that usually we're cringing over. So yes. And playing a physical game, this is something that Dave Haxtell and a few of the guys have been talking about. Again, coming from the women's side of things, I'm not big on hits just because they don't really mean much in the women's game. They're not a stat in the women's game. For the Seattle Kraken, I hear what Dave is saying, but I don't quantify that successfully being just by how many hits are divvied out. I think that there needs to be a physicality in the game, making it tough to have for in this case, the Predators to enter the zone, making it tough for them to exit the zone. And that's a gritty type of play that, yes, can result in hits, but not always. And so that's more of what I'd like to see from this team. And then also, I always look at goals for and goals against. Now, right now, the Predators are, in that top 20, in that top 15, really, with 3.09 goals per game. 2.60, which has us at 26th in the league overall. And then also you're letting up, one of the teams that's top 10 teams letting up the fewest goals at 2.72 per game, whereas we are giving up 3.60 goals per game. So that's 29th, in case you were wondering. So there are a few people, just a handful, just a minor little cluster of teams that are worse than us. But that's where that discipline, that teenage kind of mindset and mentality, we can find our way to scoring 4, 5, 6 goals a game, but that's almost always because we have to. We lose a decent amount of games by 1 or 2 goals, including an empty netter, but that's because we're always having to catch up. And that's so odd to me because this team was not projected to be a team that would score a lot. We found scoring. Jared McCann's been great. Ryan Donato's been great. That being said, it's reacting. It's a lot of reacting instead of taking ownership and taking control of a game. So I'm with you there. Special teams are going to be pretty crucial, but whether it's the power play or the penalty kill, the stats say that the Predators have the advantage there for sure. So, Anne, as we get ready to close out this second segment and get into our predictions and then what's coming up on our respective shows, before I let you go in this segment, though, why don't we talk about, if you had to say, if the Seattle Kraken could, hop into a game and develop a specific cheat code in order to beat the Nashville Predators, what would we have to input in order to be successful?
Yeah, so there are teams that are definitely able to break down the Predators. We've seen that in a 4-game losing streak. And one of the best ways that we've been beaten is on odd man rushes. The Predators just started kind of having some defensive lapses. And if teams jump on those and can get a quick transition game going, this has been a real problem for Nashville. It's something that they've had to be very intentional about these last couple of games to sort of turn things around. So definitely that. The other area, we're getting phenomenal goaltending from UC Saros. He's going to the All-Star game, well-deserved, really having a breakout year. He's got a .925 save percentage. But people are finding that if you're shooting glove side high on UC Saros, that's where many of the goals are going in. So that's something that we've kind of been keeping an eye on at Locked On Predators, just kind of watching and seeing, are we going to be able to kind of close that opportunity, that one little spot, y'all? Why do you keep hitting the one little spot? But they do. So that's definitely another area where if Seattle can crack that, they may get an advantage. And I would say in general, Nashville likes to play a hard, fast, physical game. They're very big on the forecheck. They're very big about, you talk about hits. This is something that Nashville is very big into, a physical game. But when they get away from that, if another team is playing a fast-paced game and Nashville can't sort of get going on the forecheck, we've seen that it's something that can cause them to stumble. So there are definitely areas where Seattle can capitalize on some things and may be able to open the door for, heaven help us, a repeat of October. So what about Seattle? So let me know what we need to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's more or less what you're doing. I don't know that you might already be the cheat code, but you talked about odd player rushes, and that's something that Seattle great at recovery. And I mentioned that Grubauer kind of plays a different game and a little bit of a frustration. I think a lot of that is because he's left out there a lot. I would also say that even when it's not necessarily a traditional odd man rush, what we're also seeing is there's a lot of exposure on the far post side, and sometimes we get a
Mhm.
little bit stuck either when we're fronting, and we're hemmed into the zone. It kind of, you see people drift out toward the puck and puck watch, and then they leave that back post exposed. We've
Yes.
also seen that our exits are not great. We've had some terrible turnovers, like, from behind the net and kind of cross ice that then get intercepted
Mhm.
right in front of the crease. And there's not very many goaltenders that are going to be able to stop that. So it's, again, those kind of teenage mistakes that one makes at an elite level. We're an expansion team, so there's some of that we're still going to have to work out. But if this were any other team, those are the kinds of things that you just can't do on a regular basis, because this is an elite level of hockey, and NHL players are going to expose those little nooks and crannies and those mistakes. And unfortunately, we're
Mhm.
seeing a lot of that, some sleepy play by the Seattle Kraken. So getting to us early, opportunities to get us frustrated and making us do a lot of work on the penalty kill. We've heard Dave Haxtell talk about how he loves that the PK has been getting better, but he doesn't love how much time the Seattle Kraken are spending on the
Yes.
PK, because that's energy that then cannot be exuded to have a strong forecheck,
Mhm.
or to maybe find some breakaways of our own. So I think a lot of what you're saying about Nashville already sounds like their game is kind of tailor fit to give the Seattle Kraken some fits. So coming up next, and now that we've betrayed both of our teams, now we have to
I know.
now we have to make good for all of the fans and remind them why they love watching their favorite hockey team. So in the third segment, we're going to talk about ways that our team, we really want to see them elevate and step up to get this win. And of course, some key players to watch, as well as what both of our shows, respectively and together, have coming up in the next handful of weeks. Oh man, it's always fun and to chat with you. I can't believe we're on our third segment already, but this is the one we're going for gold here. Well, at least
Okay.
NHL version of gold, which is in this case for both of our teams. Just let's just get a regular
Just
degular
2
win.
points.
Yeah, let's
Yes.
just get a
2
win.
points.
Okay, in regulation
Yes.
would be great, you know, but let's go ahead and get a win. So let's start with Nashville. We've talked
Mhm.
about a few things that could be an Achilles heel, but the who and the what will get the Predators a win.
Yeah, so the who actually is a really fun topic and one I love to talk about because I have been a huge fan of Matt Duchene, who has struggled in his first couple years here in Nashville and has really taken some heat from the fans in Nashville about maybe not being as productive as they thought he was going to be. Well, Matt Duchene has just reemerged and is having a phenomenal season. He's got 38 points, 19 goals, 19 assists. This is somebody who is on fire. He's playing with Philip Forsberg and Mikhail Granlund, two others who are also having great years. Philip Forsberg has 20 goals. So we've got some guys that are just having some of their best hockey seasons. So I think you're going to see Matt Duchene, you're going to see Philip Forsberg probably on the score sheet in one form or another. And another person to kind of keep an eye on is our young fella. We've got a young rookie named Tanner Jeannot, and you won't miss him. There's a lot of Tanner Jeannot to love. He's a big, big boy. He is on what we lovingly refer to as the herd line. And this is a line that comes out and they are physical and they are heavy hitters, but they also are really strong offensively. And Tanner Jeannot is having a really great season. We are kind of a little bitter here in Nashville that more people aren't mentioning his name for the Calder, but I think his style of play is maybe not as flashy as some of the front runners for the Calder Cup are. But Tanner Jeannot is going to be another name to keep an eye on. And of course, we've got UC Saros and Net, who is just having such a great season. So I think those are some names that you're going to want to keep your ear out for and players to keep your eye on the ice. But now I want to ask you the same question. Tell us,
Yeah.
who do we need to be watching out for when it comes to the Kraken, and what do we need to be on guard about?
Yeah, well, for sure. Like I said, it's been a little bit of a tough go for the Seattle
Mhm.
Kraken. That being said, there are some players that have definitely stood out, and you got to really just, give it up for players like Jared McCann, Yanni
Yeah.
Gord, and of course Jordan, excuse me, yeah, Jordan Eberle. I would have said Jaden Schwartz, but unfortunately we lost him also to injury. But yeah,
Mm.
Jordan Eberle, Jared McCann, and Yanni Gord, when you look at just where they are as far as points for the Seattle Kraken team, they're definitely getting it done. They're players that we can expect to score. They also are players that can create for themselves or their teammates. So I always call one of those guys. Another guy I love is Ryan Donato, especially because
Mhm.
when the Kraken came on board and Ryan Donato, and we took Ryan Donato, there were a handful of teams that were like, oh, great guy when he starts, but then he doesn't end very well. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's just because he didn't love y'all as much as he loves us. And I am happy to say that so far, Auntie ain't lie about that. Ryan Donato has been putting on for the Seattle Kraken. He's got 15 points, 9 goals, 6 assists. So we'll take that. We'll take that, from a third, fourth liner, grinding it out there. He's had to really earn his time. And with a lot of players in and out of the roster for a handful of reasons, I think that Dave Haxel has come to see Ryan not as someone just to plug in when you have
Mhm.
pieces missing, but as someone you can, really scout around and really create a game plan with Ryan Donato in mind. And what I love about Ryan Donato is that he has that energy, that energy
Yes.
that sometimes is
Mhm.
just missing from the Seattle Kraken. Like I said, they are the cutest, most adorable, just well mannered, polite little teenager that you have ever met. They probably hand in their homework on time and without any crinkles. And I love that for them. But sometimes you need a little spice. And Yanni
Yes.
Gord definitely gives that. Ryan Donato definitely gives that. But also, we've been seeing Carson Soucy step it up here in the last handful of games. So he's one of the players. A lot of players have been hitting above their weight, so to speak, from
Mhm.
last season, and the Seattle Kraken has needed a lot of players to do that. So Soucy is one of those who, as of late, has been stepping up. And then it's probably going to be Grubauer and net. We gave Joy Decord
Mhm.
a start, and I think that was good for Gruby to get some rest, especially with, as I mentioned, unfortunately, two goalies in COVID protocol.
Yes.
Wild. So the goalie situation has definitely been up and down. So if we
Yeah.
can get Gruby into a good mood through the first period, I want
Yes.
crystals. I want sound bath. I want all of the things for this man so that he has everything that he needs to be successful in net.
Now, I will say that I can't possibly put this episode out in Nashville without asking about our sweet boy, our Callie Yarncrook, who you all stole heartlessly from us. Now, this was I will tell you, losing Callie Yarncrook was a huge thing in Nashville. And Nashville's had some great success, but I will tell you, there's a number of people who are not over not having Yarny. So just want to check in.
Oh.
How is our boy Yarny doing?
He's definitely getting it done. He's been able to contribute in other ways. So
Mhm.
he's getting it done there, but so it was kind of funny though just to see how long it took for Jan Krog to kind of get in the mix there. Um
Yeah.
but yeah, I think he's definitely someone who we're seeing step up. Yarncroak, with as many players as we've had in and out of the lineup, he's been one of
Yeah.
those players that we've seen bounce around, and we've seen him with McCann and Eberle for a little bit there with Schwartzy now out. And, so he's kind of been a mix and match, but I think he's, really just one of those forwards that, is going to grind it out. And
Yep.
I love that. I love that he's hardworking. I don't see him making a lot of mistakes, and there are a lot of mistakes that are made on the ice for the Seattle Kraken. But
Yeah.
Calle Yarncroke, we're starting to see him get going there, which I absolutely love for him.
Oh, I love it. Well, that sounds exactly like the Calle Yarncroke that we know and love and miss here in Nashville for sure.
Yes, yes,
So thanks
indeed.
for that update. Our
Of
hearts needed
course.
that.
Of course. Well, it's always a pleasure to have our squad cast between Locked On Kraken and Locked On Predators. But Anne, we have more for the fans coming up. So why don't you give us a little taste of what we can expect from our next squad cast, particularly as it relates to the Beijing Winter Olympics and Paralympics?
We have got some really great things in the works coming up. Erica and I are going to be squad casting again. We're going to be talking about the Olympics and the Paralympics. Erica is going to walk us through the Olympics, the women's hockey side. So we are going to get to know some more about these players and about the competition coming up. And I am so excited. We're going to be talking about the Paralympic sled hockey team. Team USA was just officially announced at the last Nashville Predators game. So we're going to break down that roster, tell you everything you need to know about who is on this team and their experience and what you can expect in Beijing for the Olympics and Paralympics as well.
Yes, indeed. And I am so excited to be ushering you into the women's hockey space and
Yes.
you ushering me into the sled hockey space. And then together we combine forces to support number 2 draft pick, Maddie Beniers, and the rest of the USA men's hockey team that has been put together to represent the US in Beijing. So I think it's going to be good times through and
Yes.
through. I think we have at least 2 teams that will be in medal contention, and we'll see what the young guys can do this time around. But Anne, always a pleasure to have you on the Squadcast. And for the fans, thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Locked On Predators and Locked On Kraken. Now that you've made this your first listen, make sure you head over to Locked On Bets, where you've got your boy Q and Lee Sterling, handicapping expert, getting you ready to make good on all those props and odds that we talked about earlier for BetOnline.ag. But for Ann Kimmel, Erica Lindsay Ayala, host of Locked On Kraken, this has been a fantastic Squadcast, and we will catch you tomorrow on our respective podcasts to talk more about your favorite NHL team. Bye!